Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. All right, today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, side projects, which is probably one of yours too. Because building a side project as a software engineer can be one of the best things you do. It can enhance your career. It can help you get hired faster. It can help you up-level really quickly, help you switch careers. It can help you make a side business. I've literally done every single one of these things through side projects. So I'm not just talking about this because I've read it in a book or because I know it's the right thing to say. I build side projects, not for a living. I wish I built them for a living, but I build side projects all the time because I know that they're the fastest and most effective way to learn. Right now, I'm building a side project using some Python, using some LLMs in the background, doing some scraping, things that I don't normally come up against at work. And some things that I do come up against at work, they're going to help me really learn really quickly because I want to learn more about AI and LLMs and data engineering, just a little below the surface. I'm also learning linear algebra and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, that's outside the scope of this show. Where I see people go wrong is that they fall back on one of these overused projects that everybody does because they don't know where to start. They know, like, what should I build? I don't know. Well, I'll build a clone of some other app, a to-do app, a weather app, a movie finder app. And here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with these projects, right? I don't want to bash these projects. We've done some of these projects at Parsity. We will continue to do some of these projects at Parsity because everything doesn't have to be a masterpiece. Everything doesn't have to be you being an entrepreneur and building the next big product or trying to launch it and get some money. Sometimes you just need to do a standard tutorial to learn some basic coding stuff. But once you want to get beyond that, and once you want to get hired, you are going to have to move beyond that. And let me make it clear. When you want to stand out, you cannot make one of these projects. I was a hiring manager a few years ago. I was going through stacks of resumes, and I was blown away by the number of people who made the same app. From the dude in New York to the woman in Texas to the guy in New Orleans to the person in California. They all went to separate boot camps. They all went to colleges or whatever. They all built the same apps. And at that point, it's really difficult to differentiate. Like, who do you call in? The dude that built the weather app or the woman that built the movie finder? It's really difficult. So if you're betting your career or getting hired on one of these apps, you're doing it way wrong. It's not going to impress anybody. It may help you learn some stuff, but it's not going to be the unlock that you think it is. And the biggest problem with these kinds of projects, especially if you're building them from a platform like Udemy, for example, and you're watching what somebody types and then you're typing what they type, you're going to walk away with something that might look really, really good. In fact, I met a young woman years ago who did this. She built this app and it was amazing looking. I was stunned. And then when we started to debug it, it quickly was clear that she had zero clue how this app worked at even a very basic level. That was shocking to me. And you don't want to start your career off in that way. Because let's say you do fool somebody into hiring you. I've seen this happen more than once. And you will be fired. You'll be found out and you won't last very long. That would be an awful experience to have. In the program that Zubin and I run, Parsity Inner Circle, there's no chance of anybody even getting through our program that would be able to do that. But unfortunately, I notice a lot of boot camp grads fall into this spectrum. It's a really negative habit because I get it. You want the outcome, but you're not going to get it, right? You may fool somebody quickly and you'll probably lose what you quickly had. So what do you build? We know why we don't want to build cookie cutter things ultimately, and we know why it's really bad to copy and paste. I hope that's clear now because I have enough horror stories that I can share about that. So that leads us to, what do we build? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the goal of a good side project. The goal of the good side project is just to learn something. That's it. Sometimes it can turn into a business. I've started a failed startup from a side project. I also have a not so failed startup from a side project. But the primary goal is to develop new skills. If you're not learning, you're just wasting your time. So if you don't know where to start, your learning can feel scattered. So I have a really simple process that helps me out, and it'll help you too. I think. I'm almost certain this will help you out. And there's a video of me going through this exact process in the show notes as well that I hope you'll find helpful. You can follow along if you're more of a visual person and you can take a look at it. And there's also a document that I have here because I like you And I think that you probably deserve to read this document. I've shared it before, but I think it's always helpful to share again. Use it, seriously, use it. This is what I use. This is the process that I use. I'm not just talking out of my head here. Well, I guess technically I kind of am talking out of my head. Anyway, step one, start with the data. Most important step. This is the longest piece of this pre-work, by the way. There's some pre-work and then there's the work. I mean, the work is obviously building the thing. But before you get started, we're going to do a bit of pre-work, and this is very important. Most people ask, what should I build? Wrong question a bit. Instead, you start with the data. If you don't have a strong idea of what to build, you're going to fall back on something that's static, like a website, something about you or your family or the local plumber down the street or whatever. These are not only not that interesting, it's just they won't teach you a bunch because they end up being static, right? They're just like CSS, HTML, and some pictures and stuff like that. So start with the data. So what I do is I look for public APIs, open data sets, APIs for things that I might be interested in. I tend to go for things like stocks, real-time data. I don't know anything about stocks, by the way, sports, anything else that you might be interested that has some publicly available data. And you can go to github.com and look for public APIs. You can go to Fast API. Some are free, some are not. And we're going to learn how to filter out some of the junk in there. And before you do any of that, though, do me a favor and go to OpenAI and sign up for OpenAI's API and get a key, an API key. Put maybe $5 in your account so you can experiment later. Trust me, we're going to come back to this. I am making a big bet that this is the thing that you should probably take your time to learn. And it doesn't have to be OpenAI. You can choose any LLM with an API that you can use. I think there's Llama. There's Anthropic, I think. There's a few others out there. I'm just familiar with OpenAI, so that's the one I recommend. And we're going to put a pin in that and come back to that later. So when you're looking up these APIs, make sure one is HTTPS because it needs to be secure. HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. If it's not secure, it'll be really difficult for you to deploy your project and have people use it safely. Make sure it's free so you don't have to sign up for an API key and pay all sorts of money and stuff like that. That's not going to be fun. And lastly, here's a weird one. CORS restrictions. You want to make sure that you can access this API from a different domain. So CORS stands for Cross-Origin Resource Sharing, and it goes a little something like this. If you are on a domain cats.com, but your API is at dogs.com, well, those aren't the same, obviously, and browsers don't like that. So when your website tries to fetch data from the API that's on a different domain, the browser will block it unless, dogs.com allows it. So before you even start testing it, if it has really strict CORS policies, you probably don't even want to use it on your front end. So that's something you should look at. And a lot of these APIs will tell you up front, like, hey, we have this CORS policy, or no, it's fine. You can call this from any domain. Most understand that you're not going to be on the same domain. But if that's not clear, that you want to steer away from it because that will lead you to all sorts of headaches down the line. So what do you build around the data? This is step 2. Once you have your data source, so let's say I picked stocks, always a favorite one of mine because you can get real-time data, which people really like. We could do some cool stuff with AI with this real-time data. People like money, I've been told this, can't prove it, but I heard this thing. So if you find a stock market API that gives you real-time stock updates, and I believe there's one called Alpha Vantage that I've used in the past, and maybe you know nothing about the stock market. Like I don't know anything about the stock market. I don't know anything about sports. It doesn't matter. What we're going to do is figure out what we can build around this data. So let's say we're looking at the stock data. Maybe we'll have a small stock ticker. You can pick a symbol and you can see the price. Then you see like a 30-day trend or something like that. And then you can run that data through an LLM like OpenAI, and you can ask it for trends and then maybe some advice on what you might want to do. It's not like super mind-blowing, but it's a starting point, right? It's just a starting point. So if we want to take it further, we could do something like have alerts for people when their stock dips below a certain threshold, or if there's some sort of news that affects that particular stock that they'd want to know about. We could have a Google alert. We could do all sorts of weird stuff. But this is where your ideas start flowing, right? You think, okay, what can I build around this that somebody might actually find useful? So, but we start really small, right? We start pretty small. We say, let's just build something that just shows the daily average of the stock or something like that, and then maybe a 30-day chart, right? I think that using AI tools is crucial for developers to learn right now. LLMs are becoming part of normal workflows for software engineers. It used to be like 2 years ago, this was unheard of. Then we got Copilot. Now we have tools like Cursor, which I'm using, by the way. It's a great addition or replacement for VS Code, which has AI integrated directly into it. It's like autocomplete on steroids. Also, you can add files for context and it can like rewrite files for you, which is really, really helpful. I'm actually making it my goal to write a lot less code than usual. I'm really leaning into these tools, but I'm only leaning into them because I know what's good versus bad for the most part. I mean, I'm not some super senior software engineer. It's just that I know when something's wrong or if it's right, and I know what I want the code to do. If you don't know what you want the code to do, then you probably don't want to just rely on these overly at this point, but I don't even know anymore. But I think these things are so important now that Zubin and I are considering launching an AI mentorship program. And it's not going to be turning people into AI engineers, which is this buzzword that I really don't like. But it's basically making software engineers AI literate. It's going beyond just using APIs. It's like linear algebra, vector databases, structuring prompts for better results, and building AI enhanced applications. This is not to become an AI machine learning engineer or a data engineer. It's going to cover some topics that software engineers should be fairly comfortable with and introduce some new topics that most of us don't know enough about that can really help you stand out, because I see the future. We all do. Everybody is using AI, but the problem is few companies really know what to do with the AI capabilities. They have tons of data at their disposal. They don't even know what to do. They know they have to incorporate AI, but they don't know what to do. So I think this is going to be a really cool program. If you're interested, join the wait list. We're going to keep this at like 10 people to work closely with everybody, and you can find more information in the show notes. So if you're still stuck on what to build, you start with the data. Once you find the data set, you figure out what you can do with it, then you test it. You test it by going somewhere like CodePen, and then you quickly write out a fetch function to query the API, get back some data, and just show something on the screen. The reason I do that instead of going directly into VS Code or Cursor or starting up a whole project is because maybe the API is junk. And maybe it doesn't really work the way the document says it works, and I don't want to go through the time of doing all that. You should do what makes sense to you. Now, lastly, you want to sketch out the flow, right? Like literally draw this out. And in the video that I have below, you'll see me actually draw this out in a tool called Excalidraw. You can use the back of a napkin. It really doesn't matter. Just ask yourself this question. What happens when a user first goes to this page? What do they see? Do they see a login? That could be cool. Maybe you need a login. Maybe you don't. Maybe stay away from the login for now. Maybe they just see a stock ticker in my case. So maybe they just go to the page and they see immediately a stock ticker. Well, wait a second. Which stock do they see? Ask yourself these questions. What do they see? Why do they see it? What happens next? What happens when they click on this? And draw it out like a really rough sketch of what you're going to make. Once you have this sketch, then you have the data. You've tested it to make sure it's actually going to work. Now is the part where you plot out your tech stack for this project. I like to follow the 80-20 rule. I'm going to pick 80% technology I'm familiar with and 20% technology that I'm not familiar with, but I want to learn more about. The reason being, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. So I'm familiar with React, Next.js, TypeScript. I'm not that familiar with Python. I'm not that familiar with LLMs outside of OpenAI. So maybe I'm going to use a different one. Maybe I'll use Llama. Maybe I want to use a vector database. I'm not too familiar with those. So maybe I'll use Pinecone as my vector database if I even need one for this project. But I'm going to plot out a few technologies that I really want to learn and figure out how I'm going to incorporate them into this project. Remember, the goal is to learn. So even if I have to build something that doesn't quite fit into my original plan, like maybe the stock ticker doesn't need a vector database. Maybe there's 0 point to do that. I'm still going to use it, because that's what I want to learn. So I'm going to use this opportunity to learn stuff that I don't know, but I'm going to have my old standbys there. That way I can work effectively. That way I'm not just fighting against myself and just trying to learn 100% new stuff, because that's a really quick way to become discouraged. And next, this is the most important step. Well, I mean, geez, all these steps are super important in my opinion. But here's the next part. You have this idea. Now you got to actually build the thing. You got to sit down and build it. But where do you start? again, this is where analysis paralysis sets in. You sit down, you look at your computer, and you think, I'm going to build this whole thing. So instead of building the whole thing or just this big, giant, cloudy task, you think, what is the first thing I need to do? And I will write this out like week by week, sometimes day by day if I'm really into it. Right now, I'm working on a project that actually is using some of this stuff. I'm using Pinecone. I'm using OpenAI's API. And I'm trying to build a retrieval augmented generative UI that's going to write newsletters and LinkedIn posts like me. Pretty, useless project, but it should teach me a lot about RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So that's what I want to learn. I want to learn more about LLMs and AI stuff. So that's what I'm building. And I'm learning a little bit of linear algebra on the side to go a little bit deeper. So what I'm doing, and what I suggest you do as well, that I've used this same pattern for years, is I will plot out what's like the bare minimum thing I got to do tomorrow or this week. Well, this week, I need to upload all my old posts into Pinecone. That's my task. That's it. Then I'm done. Okay, done. Now, what is the next step? Okay, once that's done, I can then build the API that's going to query that. So I'm going to build an API that can query that and then spit out a result from that query. Okay. And then each of these tasks should ladder up eventually to a finished product. And a finished product is in quotes because it's never really finished. Once I have the minimum viable product, the minimally viable product, the MVP, then I'm going to think, what can I add on top of it? So for you, strongly suggest, how do you add AI on top of this? I know everybody's sick of hearing about AI, but that's good because once it gets boring, that means it's going to be useful. We're getting to the period where it's getting boring. Every other week, the news is in a stupid cycle of AI hype, but that's okay. While the normies are freaking out about AI, you need to learn how to use it because there is going to be a divide, a digital divide, I think, like we've never seen. On one hand, we have people that are leveraging AI, using ChatGPT to enhance their work, to improve, to automate things. And on the other hand, people that aren't. And they're going to be moving a lot slower than those of us that are using AI. And then a step below that are the software developers that realize there's money, obviously, in creating pipelines and data, but there's also a lot more in leveraging these off-the-shelf models to do interesting things. For example, maybe your company has a ton of data in spreadsheets in Excel. These are glorified calculators. What if you could mash this data together in some smart way, collect the most relevant pieces of data that you've identified as a human, feed that to an LLM on some sort of interval, and get updates about what this data means that a human could understand without having to know Excel? How valuable is that to your company? Very valuable? Not valuable at all? These are things you should start considering and questioning. How can you programmatically use these APIs with data that you have or your company has that is proprietary, meaning nobody else has this? That is where the power is. It's not in just building a better autocomplete. It's in getting data and feeding that in a smart way to an autocomplete. So then you can get new data that you can actually take action on. Humans aren't good at sifting through large blocks of text and data. An LLM can do that very, very well. Better data means better decisions, means more money sometimes. So that's my spiel and rant on that stuff. But this is what I'm doing. And of course, I'm biased because I think it's what you should be doing. But I really do think this is the kind of side project that more people should be building because I don't see anybody building side projects with AI. It's kind of crazy. I'm like, where's all the cool side projects with AI? It's out there. It's at our disposal. It's easier to use than ever. And you can just start doing it. Anyway, I really hope that's helpful. If you want to work with Zubin and I in a custom coaching program to take you from zero to hired with a personalized roadmap that may or may not include some AI stuff, then join us at parsity.io/inner-circle. And if you're interested in joining that potential AI mentorship program, which I'm really excited for, I hope people do sign up for this. I have a few people signed up already. But sign up in the show notes below because we'd love to invite you in. We're going to cap it at 10 people, so we'll see how much interest there is, and we'll either do it or we won't. Hope that was really helpful, and I will see you around. Thanks. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode. And the reason why a lot of people listen to this show is because they want to become a software engineer. So maybe you went to a boot camp, or maybe you're just learning to code. And maybe you want to make this the year that you actually become a software engineer. If that's you and you have the time and the dedication and you're not looking for some get rich quick scheme, you should join Zubin and I for a very customized program where we take you from zero through hired with an intensely personalized custom roadmap that we will help you see through step by step to get interviews, pass interviews, and learn the skills that'll make you a professional grade coder. If you're serious and want to start working with us one-on-one, then schedule a call by using the show notes below or apply online at parsity.io/inner-circle. Now back to the episode.